is Waldorf education? Waldorf education began in 1919 in Germany, when the owner of the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory went to a fairly well-known German philosopher named Rudolf Steiner and said, "Would you please design a school for the children of my factory workers?" And at that point, Rudolf Steiner said, "Okay, based with some conditions. It has to be open to everybody. It has to be coeducational," which was unusual at that time. The teachers, and I think this is something you'll hear in common all along here, the teachers have to be fundamentally in control of the school, and it has to be independent of government control. And so Emil Molt, the Waldorf Astoria cigarette guy, said, "Okay, it's yours, see what you can do." And he designed a school. Oh, there was one other condition, and that was that it needed to be an integrated early childhood through grade 12 curriculum, that he wanted a full range. And so this process of developing a different picture of education began. And it was really rooted in this question of what was happening all over Europe, in common and other places, of how do we create a sense of social renewal in a Europe that is in severe crisis and between two world wars. How do we start to deal with these issues so that it doesn't get worse? Now, clearly, it only got worse. The idea with Waldorf education was to try to meet the needs in Germany at that time so that National Socialism would not gain the foothold that it did. And for a lot of reasons, it was not successful. The Waldorf schools in Germany were shut down, and Rudolf Steiner's work was banned for the duration until after World War II was over. But that was really the impulse, this impulse of social renewal, of meeting the young child as a human being who's not fully finished yet, but who brings with him or her a real sense of deep wisdom and mission in the world. And so in the 20s, Waldorf education began to really spread worldwide. And there are schools in over 83 countries at this point. The Waldorf establishment likes to say, and I'm not sure how you measure this, but they like to say that it's the fastest growing non-sectarian movement in the world. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is growing fast. And we have a school that's in many ways different than anything that people have seen before. When you walk into a Waldorf school, you walk into a place where children are expecting to have the same teacher from first grade all the way through 8th grade, the same class teacher. The curriculum is unique in that it is more closely tied to a picture of child development than probably most any other curriculum is. So that what Rudolf Steiner did was to say, this is how I see children developing over the course of 3 7-year periods, 0 to 7, 7 to 14, and 14 really to 21 at that time, although functionally it's about 18 at the graduation from high school. And how do we take a curriculum and really carefully examine those stages and match every single thing that we do to the stage of development of that child? And so it's much less about goal-oriented education than it is about process-oriented education. Everything that we do when we go and stand in front of a classroom has to do with how old those children are, the way that we answer questions, the way that we present material, what material we present. And so the curriculum in some ways is very structured in that sense, and yet the class teacher is handed a tremendous amount of freedom at the same time. What lies really crucially at the center of what we do is the creativity of each teacher. How do you take a rough sketch of a curriculum? You know that you did certain kinds of things in first grade, certain subject material in second grade, the third grade, which I'm teaching now, has a list of subject material, but what do you do with that? There are no textbooks, there's no recipe, and what the teacher gets to do then is really look at, okay, I know I'm going to be teaching practical arts in third grade. The 9-year-old needs to engage with the world, engage with real activity, real work in the world. Well, how am I going to do that? What does my particular group of children look like? What is really going to excite them? How do I design a project that really meets their skills and challenges where they're weak? And in many ways, that's really exhausting. Because every class that goes through, while they cover the same basic material, their experience may be very different depending on the teacher. And it's actually pretty frowned upon in the Waldorf community that you just take what someone else has done and do it in your own classroom. That really the expectation is that the teacher meets that material and penetrates it and thinks about it and processes it and comes up with something that in some ways is really unique and fresh and new this time around. And that's a pretty exciting thing to be able to be part of. The looping through 1st through 8th grade is also something that is unlike anything else. And people often say, you know, what if the teacher doesn't get along with the children? And certainly that there can be issues, those do arise, and those have to be worked through. But you have a real sense of a community and of a family around each class. And just like a parent doesn't say, you know what, the second kid I don't like so much, so we're going to get rid of that one. Class teacher really can't do that either. The children come to your class, and the task of the class teacher is to say, okay, what is it in me as a human being that has a hard time with that child, and what do I need to do? What do I need to change in myself to really work with that child? And so there's this secondary piece of constantly being challenged to become better, to meet that child, because it's not up to the child. It's up to the adults, just like it's up to the parents to meet their own children and to give them what they need, not up to the children to live up to their parents. And so you have that relationship that is a pretty amazing one to be part of. As you've heard from both other teachers, and I'm sure we're going to hear again, you know, the challenges of being in a school where the faculty really is the driving force is in a Waldorf school the same thing. There are always meetings after school. There are always faculty on the board, although we have a board, most Waldorf schools do, that are more heavily parents, but there are always faculty representatives. There are class plays that happen on the weekend. My husband and daughters are at the 8th grade class play right now. You know, there's this whole hubbub that happens around the community of an active school like that. And so it becomes really something that you step into because you're called to do it, because you feel passionately that this is what I want to do in the world. And that's the best of teaching, no matter where you're teaching. If you can find a place where you feel just absolutely called to be that person, then that's really exciting. Just quickly, the community building piece. The Waldorf school structure is very intently, we do it with these 3 little circles. We've got the faculty, we've got the board, which is primarily parents, and then the parent community, the parent association. And they interact. The parents are, because we don't have big funding either, actually. We don't have an endowment. Most Waldorf schools don't. We don't get paid any more than they do. And so we depend heavily